Welcome here to our live podcast with Troy today. My name is Randy Wolgemuth. I'm just going to give it one more minute here. I'm really excited to have you all here this morning, or whatever time of the day it is for you. It's probably mostly morning. And the reason we're doing this live is it gives an opportunity for people to ask questions, especially for Troy, well, for me too, for that matter. But I just wanted to I'll start off with my background. I'm a 10X business coach and a John Maxwell coach. I've been in business all my life. I've been doing mostly coaching and mentoring the last 5 years, about 90% of my time. And met Troy about a year ago, and then last fall we had some meetings, and this spring we are partnering together to provide corporate coaching and counseling to the corporate world. He has his own counseling service, but him and I are partnering to like I say, the corporate world and their employees and leaders. So I'm very excited to be working with Troy. He's got tons of experience, and I think between the two of us, we make a good team. Well, we make a good team. He makes it a good team. I love working with people. And sometimes I tell people all I do is talk, and then hopefully someone else picks up the pieces. So anyway, the way we're working here today is I will start by asking Troy some questions. Margot will be watching the chat for any questions that you may have. Just put them in the chat and she'll compile them. And then at the end there, we'll answer the questions that you have and ask anything you want. Whatever question you have is fine. So my background is business and sales, and I just want to just I always like to have offers, and it's not like this is a sales call, but just so you understand where we're coming from, we do make our money by selling our services, and in my case, I have masterminds, and the one that I just want to mention is I have a sales mastermind. I'm starting group number 5 that I started 16 months ago. It's a 10-month program, very deliberately sales oriented, and it's the human side of sales. And with AI becoming very predominant, my niche that I think is kind of the human side of sales. So it's $400 a month for 10 months. And if you want are interested, we can send details later. And then Troy, his offer is coaching corporate other leaders, owners, leaders. And we do have a 8-package coaching program for $2,600, and that is, we call it performance coaching. So where Troy comes in, and we'll talk about it more, is a little more on the mental health, and he just brings a different perspective than what I do. That's probably the simplest way of explaining it. Anyway, very excited to have you all here, and I'll start off by asking Troy some questions, and he'll ask me some questions. But the first one I want to ask you is, 3 years ago, I'd never asked this question, but it's more interesting to me now. I am a diabetic, so the last year and a half, I've tried really hard to fix some of my healthy issues. And what I'm finding is I have more energy when I'm eating properly, which isn't really a big surprise for a diabetic. But my question, Troy, is, does healthy eating help you with how you think and how help you be productive?
There's 100% correlation to that. So this is more my wife's area of expertise, but I don't think she'll mind if I talk about this briefly. But diet is something that's often overlooked. And when we get our body in order, it's amazing how the body that God designed will actually repair itself. And far too often, we don't give it the essential nutrients. Sometimes there's genetic problems. We don't have certain enzymes. We're missing certain minerals. It's really amazing to see what happens when you give the body exactly what it needs. Maybe it's a B12 deficiency. Maybe it's magnesium. Like, our medical system is so on the one side where it's all about over medication and replacement of what I would call symptom managers. They don't fix underlying causes. I don't want to get political this early into the call, but I wouldn't even call our healthcare system a healthcare system. I call it a disease management system, because for emergency medicine, they're great. But for anything chronic, they're not great. So, what you're describing in terms of managing diabetes, absolutely, there's a correlation with diet, exercise, sleep, some of the basics that we often forget. And if we could get those simple things lined up, my goodness, does that make a difference? And it allows for the coaching that you and I to do, and even the therapy that I continue to do for some of my other clients. It allows those seeds to take root. Because if anybody's familiar with the concept of Maslow, it's a nursing thing that I grew up with. But Maslow's needs hierarchy talks about self actualization being the tip of that pyramid, which is essentially what performance coaching is all about. How do we help people self actualize? None of what we teach matters if the deficiency needs underneath are not being met. I've lost a few people to suicide that were homeless. Everything I tried to teach them, meaningless if I couldn't get them off the street into housing with regular meals, access to healthcare. It's great teaching, but they can't use it. So there's a natural hierarchy to things. So for what you're describing, absolutely. Let's get the foundations laid, make sure we're getting the right diet and exercise and sleep as prerequisites, and then watch what happens with therapy and coaching and traction and results from that.
Okay, very good. Thanks. What about my next question is, you coach people through some really difficult situations. And in our case here, we're talking about, employees, leaders, and owners. What are some of the biggest like mindset traps that you run across?
That's a big one. Well, you kind of said it in the question, mindset. Mindset's everything. I can't remember who popularized this. I want to say it's the rich dad, poor dad idea, but the person who says you can and the person who says you can't, you're both right. So mindset's everything. So when we start dealing with that initial paradigm, I can't do something. As a therapist, that is an invitation for me. I look at that question or that comment and I go, well, what's beyond that? What's deeper than that? For those who have had experience with my style of counseling in the past, they'll all know my favorite question. It's so what? And I still use that effectively. I still challenge business leaders and therapy clients with the same question. Not that I'm ever trying to minimize or belittle where someone's at in their process, but the real question is, what are you going to do now? I don't care why we get where we get or why we're stuck where we're stuck. Why usually isn't the right question. So it's this idea of what needs to change. Is it mindset? So the mindset gap is often rooted in things that I would say, from a therapeutic point of view, need to be addressed before performance coaching takes root. When we talk about business leaders, for instance, I don't want people that are business leaders in the room to feel any unnecessary pressure, but at the same moment, we're all human. So business leader is a title, mother is a title, best friend is a title, pastor is a title. What is unique and what is common about all these things is that we're all human and we all struggle. So whether it's a business leader dealing with intense shame and guilt from their past decisions, or somebody else struggling with addiction, there's a lot more that keeps us common. And there's a lot more parallels between people of all walks of life when we actually start dealing with human psychology. So the mindset traps that would probably really hold people back, the first one that comes to mind is shame. It's this idea that I am bad. There's a lot of people that wrestle with that. Addiction, if there's any addiction present, the root of addiction is shame, believe it or not. Perfectionism, the root of perfectionism is shame, because I'm not enough and it's never going to be perfect enough. So why do I keep doing what I do? Why don't I just quit? Why bother starting? Procrastination is a part of that perfectionism mindset. So we see a lot of these things in performance coaching. And if I could target shame on the first session with people, which is something I typically do. I want people to understand there's no evidence for why they think they are bad. Guilt is an entirely different beast. Guilt says I did bad. Shame says I am bad. Major philosophical difference. So when there's guilt, we can deal with guilt all day long. For people that are parents, we know this to be true. When our kid makes a mistake, they're not a mistake because they make a mistake. We know that. But then we use a very different measuring stick when it comes to ourselves. And all of a sudden, I can't make mistakes. That's BS. So, how do we get past those mindsets and realize it's not shame, and shame will keep us from all of our results? So, that would probably be the biggest thing. The second one, and I won't spend a lot of time on this because it may come up later on, fear would be the next one.
Yeah.
COVID showed us an epidemic of fear. They showed us what happens when people are ruled by fear and it causes relationships to be strained. I've seen more anxiety in the last 5 years and more broken marriages and more fractured businesses because of fear. And under that fear, which again, people that have worked with me know this, I look at fear as false evidence appearing real. Where's the evidence for that fear? Are you dwelling on a possibility or are you dealing with probabilities? More than likely, there's possibilities in that mindset, and that's what keeps us from our results.
Very good. Yeah. This one, what ties into when people experience failure, what separates those who recover quickly from those who stay stuck?
Okay, I love that question, Randy. Thank you for that. I love failure. Not that I sign up for it, but failure is a catalyst for learning. I probably can't stress that one enough. John Maxwell taught us that. I see another John Maxwell coach in the room. Hi, Julie. But I mean, these are things that John Maxwell teaches us all the time. Fail forward. Sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. There's so much beyond failure. When people use failure as an identity, that's where things get really messy. I'm a failure because I failed. What is that? Shame. That's the first mindset we talked about. What if we could fail without feeling like a failure? What if we could change the way we think about failing so that it's synonymous with learning? That age old adage, sometimes I win, sometimes I lose. For anybody listening right now, let's change that. Why not? What if we forever change the way that thought process works? And now what we hear is sometimes I win, sometimes I learn. And let's get rid of the sting of failing because we're all going to fail. I would challenge anybody. I know a lot of people have their cameras off, but even if you're not with on your camera, raise your hand if you've never failed. I don't expect I'll ever see a hand. So imagine we could be okay with that. What if the people that make the biggest failures happen to be the biggest learners? In a lot of my performance coaching that I've done over the years, I've worked with a lot of successful people, 6 and 7 figure earners, and they all have one thing in common: bankruptcy, which is kind of the epitome of failure in the world's view, but it seems to be a necessary rite of passage for business success because each of us, myself included, that have gone through bankruptcy understand the limiting mindsets that we brought into those previous decisions. And it teaches us a kind of humility and respect for money and processes and whatnot. So I think failure is always the catalyst to learn. And I welcome people to shift that mindset. Sometimes I win, sometimes I learn. Let's anchor that in there.
Good. So, yeah, I could ask questions here all day, but if you could coach everyone listening here today, what's one mindset shift today that you could recommend, or what would be the one that would be helpful? Of course, everybody's different. I understand that.
That one's a bit tougher. What I would probably start with, and this is something that's even personal, like I'm working on something right now, just trying to change my own mindset, being very cognizant of the things I teach others. And sometimes a question that plagues my mind, maybe I'm the only one, but I doubt it. The question is like, can I do this? Sometimes imposter syndrome kicks in here. We've bitten off more than we can chew. Can I do this? Can I really do this? Am I holding myself out as something I'm not? So that can I do this thing reveals a spirit of insecurity. I'm not going to say it's necessarily shame. It's not fully fear, but there's this insecurity that I'm not enough, that I'm somehow an imposter, and that I don't know how to do this. So the mindset shift would be very subtle with that. I might approach it from two different angles. The first one would be to go, instead of saying, can I do something, add the word how. How can I do something? What if we start looking for solutions instead of complaints? What if we stop blaming ourselves for the results we don't have? And instead we start focusing on, is there a path? Could we reverse engineer this? Stephen Covey talked about this years ago in the 7 Habits, but begin with the end in mind. Do we have a dream? How many of us are guilty of letting our dream die in the sandbox when we left at 6? So if we could get back in the sandbox, so to speak, let that dream come alive again. What if that was all part of this? What if we could shift the way we think and go back to a how can I do this instead of can I do this? And how do we start defeating that imposter syndrome at its root? The other thing that I would throw in there in terms of a mini shift is if you have a negative bias or a negative mindset, something that says, I can't do what Troy does, or I can't do what Randy does, or I can't think like that, or I don't have those results, or I don't know how to control myself like that. What we could do is add something at the end of that thought. If it's negative, add the word yet at the end. I can't do what Randy does yet. I can't think like that yet. I don't know who I am yet. What if we could start to shift from a can I do it to a how can I? And then things that are negative in nature, add the word yet to the end of that. Two very small tweaks to mindset that might start to weave in possibility.
Awesome. Okay, well, one last question here, and I'll let you ask me a couple. But Troy, how does faith come into your coaching work?
Faith is kind of the backbone to everything I do. Um, I won't get into the full story, but some people here already know my story. But I lost everything when I was in the military for praying with somebody. So I knew I did the right thing, but the system judged me as doing the wrong thing. And I do not apologize for ever putting my clients first. I will serve my clients before I serve our system any day of the week because I love people. And that hopefully comes across in every interaction because this isn't a job for me. It's all about love, and love changes things. It changes people when people are actually standing in your corner. So, yeah, to me, it's just, yeah, it's a passion project for me. So,
Good. Very good. Okay, go ask me a couple of questions, and then we'll go to the Q&A.
all right. Well, I think my question might echo some of the other questions in the room, but you talk about being a 10x coach. Can you give some perspective on what the 10x mindset is and how that would benefit not just our partnership, but let's say other entrepreneurs and professionals in the room that are seeking results?
Okay, well, yeah, about 3 years ago, I became a 10x business coach, and sometimes when people hear 10x, the first thing they think of is, well, I'll make 10 times as much money or sell 10 times as much, which is all very good, and I think we all like that. But as the title is 10x your thinking, and I made the title before I actually thought about it, just so you guys, well, those that know me, they know how I operate. I usually run ahead and then I could go back and figure out what I want to do. But 10x your thinking is, you actually touched on it in your way, but I'll give you one example. When I started the Maxwell Masterminds, I did usually had one group at a time, and eventually needed to do more than that. And I thought, well, if I could do 10 mastermind groups at one time simultaneously, and then keep 10 going all the time, that ends up being like 80 clients, and then 2 or 3 times a year, depending on how long they go. Anyway, I've gotten to 5, so that's 5 times more than I did when I started. And then other business opportunities came along that actually came from having masterminds, which I never expected. But it's kind of like, okay, one, well, why not 10? Uh, and when you say 10, well, okay, you end up at 3 or 4. Well, that's better than one, right? So it's kind of just thinking a little bit bigger than what you do. And there's a really, really good book by Dan Sullivan, and it talks about 10x is easier than 2x. And anybody who is familiar with Dan Sullivan, me and a friend of mine, we went visit him for 4 years, went to Toronto every 90 days back before the internet days. But very much your mindset about, okay, if you want to achieve 10x, there is some sacrifices that you need. I don't know if sacrifice is the right word. What do you want to do, right? So uh, I've chosen to 10x my coaching business. I was one coach and then partnered with Troy. And then someone challenged me, well, why would you stop at 2? Why not go to 10 coaches? So, well, yeah, why not? Right. But, and it isn't all about making money. It's about being fulfilled and helping people around you. And everyone, the Cardone people, the Sullivan people, strategic coach, always talk about bringing value to other people. The money will flow. But are you having fun? Are you enjoying what you're doing? Are you bringing value? And Maxwell talks about that all day long. Bring value to people.
That's awesome. What's the biggest mindset difference, do you think, between average performers and exceptional leaders?
Well, you need to really figure out what you're good at doing. Your unique ability. 6 types of working genius is another one that I really believe in. But what are you really good at? And then get rid of everything else. Because there's 80% of what you do is not a waste of time, but it's not what you're good at. So what's the 20% that you're really good at? And then focus in on that. And I talk about, giving up some things. Well, someone found me in my office here about a year ago. He said, "Man, you're hard to find. Where do you live?" I said, "Well, I live in Steinbeck and at Buffalo Point, and sometimes I'm down south, whatever. Well, you're hard to find." Well, I didn't tell him that. I do that on purpose. Um, Not that I'm hiding from people, but I have a mandate that I believe God has for me, which I'm
Yeah.
trying to fulfill. And that is helping people. And that includes my family and friends and my clients, right? So January 1st, I hired Margot, and she lines up 90% of my meetings. And whenever I try and line them up, I usually screw it up. I had one on Monday, I should have just given it to her. But it's very painful for me to line up meetings. And so she came along board and she has access to my calendar. And I just tell people, well, you want to meet with me? You got to talk to her or text her, whatever, right? So that's taking rid of stuff that I'm no good at and I don't like doing anyway, right? So that's just an example. Accounting is done by someone else. All my, social media, technology, Chris and McKalen are on here. They do that. So I don't really do a lot of things anymore other than talk with people.
And yet maybe that's the lane you're supposed to be in. Like that's John Maxwell right there, 21 laws. So stay in your lane, develop the things that are good, and then delegate the things we're not good at. So counterculture. So now the therapist in me wants to ask a question. So I want to go a little bit deeper with you, Randy. Actually, I want to get a little more personal. People don't care what we know unless they know that we care. So can you share a time when your own thinking had to change before your business could grow?
Well, more than once. But this is a long time ago. Uh, this was back in the agricultural days. And I think there's a few people on this call that maybe remember that time. Anyway, we had a terrible year financially. The bank called my loans, which means I had 30 days to come up with, and that this was in the 70s, come up with 200 grand in 30 days. Otherwise, I was bankrupt. And so I did not know what to do because till then I thought all the success that I have is because of me. And yeah, I got employees, but I'm the guy that makes it all happen, which was not true. Anyway, I had a big mind shift there, and we ended up Cargill was one of our suppliers. We're in their boardroom, hired a facilitator, and all the employees were there, while the 25 full-time. And he he basically talked with employees for half a day. What do we do to make that we can have a successful year? I sat in the back of the room. I didn't say a whole lot. We went from a terrible year to the best year ever, and basically letting go.
Okay. So I'm mindful of the time and I want to leave time for Q&A, but I got two more questions I want to ask you, and more about positioning some of the Q&A and also people that are in the room. So um, what does intentional personal growth actually look like? Can you speak on that one?
Well, it's very hard, um, but I often say there's the 15 invaluable laws of growth by John Maxwell. The first law is intentional. That's the most important law in that book. It's a very important law. It doesn't matter where you are in life, but you got to be intentional. And I am I'm trying every day to be more intentional. And I mean, I spend the last week of December setting my goals and targets for the year. I have a verse of the year. I have a word of the year. This year it's faith. A few years ago it was humility. Actually, I had humility 2 years in a row. Um, and I believe God told me that I needed to be more humble. But what's on my list to do? It's very intentional. And I was just reading the other day or listening to a podcast, the most successful people, and I'm not saying that making a lot of money is necessarily the most important criteria of success, but people like Elon Musk and Steve Jobs and these guys, their thing was, what are the three things that I got to get done today? Not 10. I have to-do lists sometimes that are way too long. What are the three things I got to get done today? Being intentional with that. I woke up this morning, I was up at whatever it was, 4:30, whatever, 4:15. Okay, what do I have to get done before this meeting? Okay, I got to get these two emails sent. Well, actually, there were seven, but whatever, doesn't matter. And I got a call at 9 o'clock that got put in by, and I got to get that done by 9:20, so I'm ready for this one, right? So very intentional, um, but not sacrificing the people that love you and you love, right? So I got dinner with two grandsons tonight. Very
Awesome.
intentional. Now, we have business to talk about. Yes, that's basically all we ever talk about. Not quite, but yeah, very being intentional every single day, every hour, and not beating yourself up when you don't get something done. There's a to-do list, and then there's a check mark when it's done, and then there's a line through it that gets moved to another day. And when you move them to another day enough times, you realize this isn't actually worth doing.
Okay. My last question then would be, if someone wants to completely change the trajectory of their life over the next year, where would people begin? What's the first step?
Well, there's a faith component, but besides that, I'd have this mastermind called 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth, or Gold Mastermind, using that book. But get that book, 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth. It's a I don't know how many millions have been sold, but there's 15 laws in there, and if you work on all of them, can change your life. I mean, you can read the book and do nothing, but if you read the book and do what it tells you to do, or join one of my masterminds. Of course, that's a sales plug, but anyway. So
Yeah, that actually, so this is a good place to maybe lead into the Q&A, but John Maxwell's known for talking about the knowing doing gap. You just described that right there. It's like, I don't care what people know, I care what people use. And that's something that hopefully each of us can take away, even from a meeting like this, is, did I just come and consume a bunch of information? I know more, congratulations, but will we do more? If everybody would do something as a consequence of this meeting, then we're actually going to defeat some of that knowing doing gap and people are going to start to see results.
okay, Margo, you have any questions for Troy or myself?
One question, and you can both answer it in your own way if you want. What's the difference between positive thinking and productive thinking?
Troy, you can take that one.
All right. positive versus productive. Well, one thing that comes to mind is something I've had to encounter quite a bit of, and I hope I'm not stepping on too many toes with this, but there's a major philosophy out there called the law of attraction. And I understand where it comes from. I think it's kind of a spin-off from an actual scriptural principle that talks about of the confession of the mouth, like whatever's in the heart, the mouth speaks. So they've taken a biblical truth and now they've made it self-serving. So when we're talking about a positive mindset, money, money, money comes to me and I'm the best and I'm a rainbow unicorn and nothing bad ever happens to me. And it's like, okay, we might be able to believe that, but that to me is just a positive mindset, not necessarily a productive one. So a productive mindset is essentially what we've been talking about today. The so what, the now what, the how. What if we get the right questions? Stop asking why questions and looking in the rearview mirror, looking back at your past as if that somehow defines your present. And instead, let's get productive. Let's begin with the end in mind. Let's talk about how can we do something, or can I gain the skills necessary to be able to do something like that at some time in the near future. So productive and positive aren't necessarily the same. They're not mutually exclusive, but I don't think I would put my eggs in a positive mindset. I would much rather focus on a productive one.
Sort of along with that, can confidence be learned?
Absolutely. I'll tell everybody right now the difference between, actually, no, let me back that up. Confidence, and this might take a little bit to get used to, but confidence is a consequence. I want that to resonate for a minute. Consequences aren't bad. Consequences are just the result of something. So if confidence is simply a consequence of action, that kind of defines what we're talking about right now. If I do something and it blows up in my face, one byproduct is confidence in what not to do next time. If it works, I also gain confidence, do I not? So what if confidence is not something we chase? What if confidence is something we experience as we continue to act? The danger to this whole narrative is if we don't act, if we become passive, if we live on the fence, let's say. From a spiritual point of view, the devil owns the fence, ladies and gentlemen. We need to get off the fence, pick a side. So same thing with this. Don't be content thinking about. That doesn't give you the confidence. We need to get out there and do. Well, what if I make a mistake? You will. Can you learn from that mistake? That's what's going to turn ordinary people into extraordinary people, is just that little extra we put in the beginning.
So how do you stop comparing yourselves to others?
I can keep going, or do you want to jump in on this, Randy?
Yeah, I can answer that one. It's a good question, and for me, it's interesting. Where I'm a high school dropout, been in business all my life, and I ended up in meetings and boardrooms where, based on my education, I shouldn't be there. School education, I should say, right? And I struggled with it earlier on. Like, I don't have a college degree, I don't have university, all this stuff, right? And the other thing was my father. I took over some of the people that my father was the boss for, and they keep telling me your dad was the best boss I ever had, and they're looking at me, and I'm thinking, well, I'm your new boss. And but anyway, I got to the realization that I don't need to worry about what. I mean, my dad was a good boss. I took that as a compliment for my dad, but I got to build my own brand, and it doesn't matter what your background is. And I was in a room with Grant Cardone, who's a very flamboyant, out there kind of a person. And someone asked them, well, okay, so we're at 10X coaches now, and we can use Grant Cardone material. How do we use your name and your reputation? And he was quiet for a while, and he said, I don't know if you want to use me. I'm actually a polarizing figure. I can be very controversial. Some people don't like me. Some people love me. He said, what you should do is build your own brand. And that's same thing, right? Like, build your own brand. who you are. Everyone on this call is very important and very valuable and has lots of useful things, learned stuff, right? So we're all unique. No one is like me, and I'm no one's like, so I think that's where we are who we are, and then using the tools that we can learn. I'm no smarter than anyone else. 99% of my clients are younger than me, so I just tell them, look, I'm just older and have more experience. That's the only difference. I've lived longer, but everyone, you build your brand and of who you are. And yes, I use a 10X brand. I use a Maxwell brand. They're good for business. And there's really good content that I've learned and that I can use to bolster what I do.
I'll also like to jump on that just briefly. I don't know where I heard this from, but I've been teaching this for years. The seeds, no, the roots of destruction are in the seeds of comparison. So when we start dealing with that, well, he or she is more successful than I, or I'm not enough, that again, back to the therapy side, there's shame, there's insecurity, there's fear. What if we didn't bother comparing? What if we could look in the mirror and simply ask, am I doing my best in this moment? And if not, why not? And what could I do different to change 1 degree? I don't know if we're going to talk about this, but probably the book that changed my life and my whole practice was a business book from Darren Hardy called The Compound Effect. And I could not read that book. I literally had to chew through it because I was taking so many notes. And it has influenced almost every part of my therapy practice because everything we do compounds. The couch potato compounds because they keep sitting on the couch. The business leader compounds because they keep challenging their mindset and getting around stronger leaders, knowing that I can't open that arena, but somebody else might be able to. They keep adding value because that's the one thing we can do. And then as we add value, we learn how to multiply leaders and grow. So what if we could stop comparing right in its tracks and simply look in and ask yourself, am I doing something with what I've learned? I don't care how much you know. I care what you use. And whether that's hiring a Randy or a Troy as a coach, or seeing me as a therapist, or getting hit with a 2x4 of life, we still have to do something with that. So what are we going to do with what we've been learning? Are we going to sit around and waste our capacity comparing? Or can we just be 1 degree more productive, 1 degree more intentional, and then watch what happens as that 1 degree change creates a massive difference in our mindset and our results?
So, Troy, would you say that that is the book that has most influenced your thinking?
Aside from the Bible, yes. So
Randy, what is one book that has most influenced your thinking? You've mentioned a couple today, but what's the one that you would say has most influenced?
Uh, that's it's a hard question to answer, but I would say, well, like Troy in the Bible, but 2X is or 10X is and 2X is one. John Maxwell, there's one, we talked about dreaming. There's a book called Put Your Dream to the Test. I went through that one a few years ago. It's an amazing book. 15 Valuable Laws of Growth. I love that book. 21 laws of leadership, whatever. But 15 Valuable Laws of Growth. And when it comes to sales books, I mean, there's tons of them, but Sell or Be Sold by Grant Cardone has been one. But I could go on and on. But yeah, those are probably the 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth is the one in the last 5 years that's really changed a lot of thinking. I'm starting my 40th mastermind here now in September, and I've done of those 40, 15 of them have been with that book. So I've gone through that book 15 times with 15 different groups, and I still learn. And it's very interesting. One little side note here: everyone here today, and whoever's going to listen to this, when you're all leaders, and when you really want to get close to someone, and you really would like them to tell you the truth, you have to be vulnerable first. And it's amazing what will come out. I don't like telling I told you the banker story. That one's not that hard to tell. But I've had other things happen in my life that have been way worse than that. I'm not saying tell bad stories or whatever, but it's you can learn from these books, and when you talk with people, um, it's just it's kind of like, well, I really care about you, and I'm gonna tell you something that happened to me. Like in the book, that 15 invaluable laws ago, there's a law of pain, which is the hardest one to do for most people, because you don't have to talk about your pain experiences, but they ask you, what are your 5 worst pain experiences in your life? And if you want to share one, you can, right? So it's pretty interesting what comes out of there. But at the end of the day, yeah, there's lots of good books, but it's kind of a long-winded answer to a short question.
Okay, if everyone watching today only remembered one sentence from today, what would it be?
Well, for me, it would be intentional and focused on whatever you do. Those are the 2 big words for me, intentional and be focused. And it doesn't
Troy,
matter what you do. Those are, to me, that's the one thing that's very important.
Troy, same question. If everyone watching only remembered one sentence, what would it be?
I think I would kind of come under what Randy just said. I love what he said in terms of getting a result, but how we would get that result is by going back to the heart. And call me old school, but I really do believe it all comes down to love. And if there was anything that I would want everybody to take away from here today, I would tell everybody, and I would love their heart to take this and accept it as truth. You're loved. You are capable. You can do more. This is not motivational speaking. This is truth. If you can let that kind of love in, that's what makes change possible. How many people are trying to give what they don't have? It doesn't work. So if we could take love and understand what that means, you are loved. There is forgiveness. There is more chances. You're not a screw up because you screwed up. You're in an elite group of leaders. All of us can raise our hand to the fact that we've all made mistakes. So what if that could sink in? What if people could realize I'm more loved than I've given myself credit for? Because once I understand love, I can give love. People don't care what we know unless they know that we care. So we can be that agent of change ourselves. That will help us be focused. That will help us be intentional. But let's start with the heart.
Okay, any other questions?
I just see a couple people mentioning that they appreciated the devil owns the fence comment. That was one that hadn't been heard before. And then the adding the how to a sentence, like how can I do this instead of can I do this, resonated.
Okay, I'm gonna just close off here with from this book, 10x is easier than 2x, is 10x goals require you to focus on very few things rather than many, which improves your brain's ability to focus. Research shows that continual task switching makes flow and high performance basically impossible. And I have a very short attention span, and that's a big problem that I have, a challenge I work on. So this just do 2 or 3 things really well and delegate out whatever it is, right? 10x goals promote nonlinear approaches which produce novel, innovative, and competition-free solutions. Uh, Finally, 10x goals foster leadership and teamwork, wherein you stop doing everything yourself, managing others, or needing to be right. And that's it's an interesting concept. And a lot of times I think we think, well, if we're a small business owner, we need to do everything ourselves. We can't afford to hire anyone, whatever. In this day and age, with fractional type, services and employees and whatever, there's all kinds of opportunities to be able to delegate out things that other people can do better and actually enjoy doing. So. Okay, with that, I think we'll, I thank you again very much for being here. There's a number of you people I know, bunch of you don't know. Robin, worked with her years ago. Thanks for showing up, and Leonard, there's a whole bunch of others, anyway, it's very cool. Have a great rest of the day. We have recorded this and we're gonna post it, and once it's up, we'll send you a link to it, and you can, well, you might not wanna watch it again, but if you have anyone else who's interested, you can share it.